Hi, and welcome to Corrections. My name is Jenny Nelson Peterson, and I'm happy to be your instructor for this online course. I'm trying something new this semester. I've never done these online, like mini lectures, but I'm hoping you'll find them beneficial, and it gives me a little more opportunity to interact with you. So, I want to start off with why we're studying corrections and kind of get a brief overview of this class. One out of every 100 adults is incarcerated at the state and/or federal level, and it's a huge amount of people. In fact, in 2008, it was 2.3 million people in our correction system. So you might think, why is this significant? Why does this matter to me? Well, in the criminal justice system, it means that there's always going to be bad people doing stupid things. That means that there's going to be jobs in the prisons, in the jails, probation, parole, diversion programs. There's always going to be a need for people in these fields. It also means that we have some issues we need to deal with within our criminal justice system. The United States has one of the highest incarceration rates of all Western developed nations. The country that comes closest to us is Russia, as how many people we're incarcerating. That says that maybe what we're doing isn't the most effective. So we want to look at what we can do differently and how we can make this a better system. The United States spends billions of dollars in the correctional system. This, in 2008, it was $49 billion. That's 6 times the budget for higher education. I think this is significant because we know that the higher your education level, the less likely you are to engage in crime. What I mean is, if I had a crime that had occurred and I have 4 subjects, the person with the least amount of education is most likely my suspect. Not always, obviously, and there's lots of different types of crime, but it is definitely related. And we are spending significantly more in corrections than we do on education. So, throughout history, the general approach has been to impose really repressive methods like corporal and capital punishment. Societies that relied on these draconian measures found that they did not work in reducing crime. Interesting side note is Draco was an Athenian lawmaker in the 7th century BC. He sentenced death for nearly every crime. If you lied, you could be put to death. If you cheated, if you stole, almost every crime warranted the death penalty. He said that he felt these crimes deserved the death penalty and that some crimes were more serious than others, but he couldn't think of anything more harsh than the death penalty. Well, this didn't really help the crime problem, and um, the people really resisted to this. He was overthrown, and so it wasn't super successful. One of the things that they saw is if somebody stole something and they knew they were going to be put to death no matter what, they were more likely to be violent in trying to escape, and it could actually be more dangerous. So, punishment has been justified in 5 major social contexts. The first one is punishment as natural revenge. This is the idea that you hurt me, I want to hurt you back. It's just that basic, you want to hurt someone who hurts you. And that's kind of a natural, almost biological concept, something. It's almost like if somebody pinches you, you immediately like fling a hand out and hit them. It's that instinct. The second one is punishment as social control. We've definitely seen laws written and the punishment for them written to keep certain social classes down or to elevate certain social classes. We see that in the past with, and I like to reference movies, but you go back to Robin Hood, the movie, with Kevin Costner. We'll start with that one. The example of the boy hunting in the woods, well, this was a way, I mean, the poor people were starving and they passed a law. This really kept certain social classes down. No, the movie's totally inaccurate, but it is a good reference for that. We'll also talk about this when we start looking at current drug laws and how some drugs, even though they may have the same effects, are punished more severely than other drugs, and how that has played in social class control. The third one is punishment as a source of labor. In current times, you can look at chain gangs. We also can go back to ancient times, looking at even so far back as the pyramids and major structures, roads that they used slaves and criminals as a source of labor. The fourth one is punishment as exile. It was always the idea that if somebody was an offender, we could exile them from the community, particularly in colonial times when people came to the colonies as they were developing. You really relied on your community. If you were kicked out, it was almost certain death. So it was almost a death sentence to be exiled. And then the fifth one is punishment as moral justice. And this is our idea of what is right. Things have to be made equal. If you've harmed somebody, you must be punished just to make the moral scales even. In the past, we used the term penology instead of the term corrections, and that's because in the past we only really looked at punishment. We weren't worried about rehabilitation. We weren't worried about what would happen when they were brought back out into the community. So let's get a working definition of corrections. Corrections is the range of community and institutional sanctions, treatment programs, and services for maintaining criminal offenders. If we look at the three main components of the criminal justice system, which you should have got in Intro to Criminal Justice, they are police, courts, and corrections. Corrections is generally looked at dealing with offenders after they've been sentenced. Well, that's not always the case, certainly not in today's justice system, because a lot of people are put in jail before they ever go to court, before they're ever sentenced. I mean, if I pull somebody over and I arrest them for DUI, I take them to jail and they go into the correctional system before they've ever gone through the court system. So while we do have those three components and they are kind of in a cycle, they sprout off in a lot of different ways. It's not always a completely round cycle. The role and boundaries of corrections has changed and it's expanded. It's not just punishment anymore, and it's not just what happens after you are sentenced. It now includes detention in jails, it includes pretrial sentences and supervision. So it's changed quite a bit. The mission of corrections is to protect society through a combination of surveillance and control, treatment and rehabilitative services, and incapacitation of offenders during the service of a prison sentence. A lot of this has changed. If you get a chance, Google mission statements of different correctional facilities. You'll see there's a huge difference between Georgia Department of Corrections, the Florida Department of Corrections, Kentucky, and New York. Some really focus on just the incapacitation aspect. Others focus on the treatment and rehabilitation. They really focus on getting those offenders back out into society and having them be, functioning members of society. So that's a little bit about why we study corrections. In our next talk, I'm going to look at how correctional theory has changed. So I hope you will stay with me and that these kind of mini lectures will help you out and explain the process.